Welcome to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast.
Welcome back to A Fork in Time, everyone, the alternate history podcast. It's Dylan in the host chair again. And with me, I have a very distinguished gentleman. I'll go ahead before I get him to weigh in. I'll say this is the second episode of a kind of marathon recording session we're doing. So we did the normal episode before this. This is going to be kind of the loopy one. So if it gets off the rails, just understand we've already been cooking for like 2 hours now. So this may get wackier than you expect. But before we get too far into the weeds, Chris, do you have something for the fine folks at home?
Hi, good people. I was actually waiting for the distinguished gentleman you were talking about to say something. I don't see him on the Zoom. I don't know who you're talking.
That's my imaginary friend who sits in the corner.
Okay. And keeps us on rails.
Exactly. Yes, he's very bad at his job. It's like Dan Carlin's producer, Ben, who I still don't actually know whether he exists or not.
We're 2 minutes in and it's gotten bad. We're talking about imaginary. 2 minutes in, we're talking about imaginary friends.
Well, it's the 4th of July. I'm just getting excited for the fireworks. So this is kind of one half of a split fork that we're doing. The gist of it is we're going back to the late 1700s, kind of the beginnings of the French Revolution. We are specifically going to talk about the flight to Varennes. So in June of 1791, the French King Louis XVI has called the Estates General, and he is effectively in house arrest, even if he doesn't necessarily realize it, for most of the next year and a half. He initially wants to go spend Easter 1791 at one of his other palaces when his guards, his handlers, his watchmen, whatever you want to call them, at the Tuileries Palace, where they have been staying, tell them, no, you can't go anywhere. And that's kind of the moment when Louis XVI says, oh, all of this Bastille stuff and all of this Estates General thing, I'm in trouble now. Like the kid from The Simpsons, I'm in danger now.
It's Wiggum the 14th. Or Wiggum the 16th.
Wiggum the 16th.
Me feel French? That's impossible.
I told y'all this was going to be a loopy one. So Louis XVI, when he realizes he's in house arrest and may or may not be in some danger, he and Marie Antoinette cook up this idea to escape to what is then Austrian Belgium, because Austria is ruled by Marie Antoinette's brother. So, she is a Habsburg. So they're going to flee to Austrian territory and essentially escape from what is a looming Republican, what we eventually realize is going to be a revolution in France, so that they can try and get to safety and kind of retake the monarchy that they haven't actually lost yet, but we're not going to worry about that. So the super short version of kind of a funny story is they come up originally. The plan is they're going to take 2 separate carriages. They're going to go, dead of night, quick, fast, travel light, just get to the border. And then Marie Antoinette comes in. She decides, no,
and she does Marie Antoinette things.
And she does Marie Antoinette things.
Like you got me last time with Prussia doing Prussian things and doing Marie Antoinette doing Marie Antoinette things.
Yes. She has to bring all of the cake. So she decides, no, I'm going to travel with my husband.
I'm thinking about Passover. They were chased out of Egypt so quick they didn't have time to let the bread rise.
Yes.
She let the cake rise. She let it cool on the window, and then she got moving.
Yeah. So she comes up with this idea. We're going to travel together. So that nixes the light carriages. They now have to get this big honking heavy carriage to haul all their crap. When they start the breakaway,
it's like an 18th century minivan.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's wood paneling, but it's actual wood.
Well, this works really well with the vacation thing we did last time. That worked really well.
It did. So she ends up even getting started 30, 45 minutes late. And then as she's trying to get to the carriage, she gets lost in the Tuileries garden maze. So it's like an hour and a half before they finally get on the road. This heavy carriage, a couple wheels break. They have to change some stuff. While they're changing the wheels, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette are chit-chatting with French peasants, so not exactly keeping a low profile. The long and short of it is, they're so slow that by the time they get to I forget the name of the town, but it's about 25 miles from the Austrian Belgian border.
Varennes is where they were caught.
Yeah. So they get to Varennes. Their guards that were going to escort them the last 25 miles and get them across the border have left. They're like, no, they're checking their watches. They're not coming. All right, we're going to skedaddle. A security guy at one of the checkpoints has a 50 livre banknote, looks at it, and recognizes Louis XVI from literally the cash in his pocket. And that's how they get caught. So our theory is, what if instead Louis XVI and Marie actually go with the first plan, split up light carriages, they meet up, once they get to Varennes and go across the border. So they actually successfully escape into Austrian-Belgian territory. So that's the fork. To actually really explain some of this, we have to go further back. We are recording this on the 4th of July. So
well, you know what? Listen to the previous episode.
We
did all that there.
Yeah, the super short version is, because we're Americans, we're going to say it's all America's fault. The French helped us out in the Revolution, basically ruined their economy. They were robbing Peter to pay Paul for most of the next couple of decades. 1789, Louis XVI has to call the Estates General because they're the only body that can raise taxes. He hasn't called them in 200 years, doesn't want to call them now, but he's got no choice. The Estates General essentially refused to disband, creating this sort of beginnings of this representational brouhaha that's starting to simmer. They place Louis under kind of this unofficial house arrest. All right, now you're caught up. So Louis and Marie get across the border. They're in Austrian territory. What's the first thing that happens, Chris? What do you think? I guess the first is, what happens with the impending, not quite yet, French Revolution?
Well, the first thing that happens is Marie Antoinette starts unpacking.
Actually, in one fork of this, I just really hope that Louis makes it across and poor Marie is just like stuck on the side of the road and gets left behind.
I mean,
that feels really mean.
Listen, we are not going to turn this podcast into like an 8-episode what could have happened with the flight to Varennes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's I think a couple of things happened right around this time. So this is June 1791, this happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2 months the French published their constitution. And by the way, this is not like, everybody, by the way, again, we are recording on the 4th of July. Everybody saw the meme yesterday of Thomas Jefferson saying, "Oh, that's due tomorrow." That is not how you write a constitution. The French National Assembly has been working on this for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And right after he actually makes it into Austrian Belgium, they publish it.
Yeah.
Except that it was written with the understanding that he would be a figurehead king.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that happens in our timeline, and we think still happens, is basically Austria declares war on France when they capture the king and execute him. We think they still do, to try and keep him on the throne. They basically try and put him back on the throne and kind of turn back the clock to
more of a kind of a return to absolute monarchy kind of thing. Because that is, before they even executed the king, when he was still under house arrest, as they were publishing the Constitution, you have these, like the Pillnitz Declaration and some other stuff where Austria and Prussia basically all but threaten to invade France if anything happens to the king. So now the king is in exile. His wife is the sister of the Austrian emperor. They don't need to make a thinly veiled threat. They're just going to declare war.
But it's just Austria that declares war.
Yes.
The thing about in our timeline is, because they executed both of them, and we talked about this on the previous episode, all of Europe declares war on France. Britain, Austria, Prussia, everybody declares war on France immediately and invades them.
Yeah.
Do you think that happens in this timeline, or is it just the Austrians sticking with the direct family relationship thing?
Yeah, I think at least at the very outset, it is seen more as just kind of an internal dynastic thing. It's not this kind of political theory war where it's republicanism versus monarchy. It's just kind of, the old order of Europe versus, the Committee of Public Safety and, the
No,
no,
Committee
I
of
know,
Public Safety.
the Committee
Okay.
of Public Safety is not yet,
Okay,
but like the Republican kind of thing that's going on in France. That does not happen. Depending on what weird stuff does end up happening in this timeline, it might spread farther afield. But I think because it starts as a dynastic thing, it is contained to some varying degree of that. So at other people may hop in at some point in some capacity, but it's going to be primarily a French versus Austrian dynastic war.
I mean, I think keeping in mind a little bit of like what happened in the American Revolution, like technically the Dutch and the Spanish were on the American side as well.
Yeah.
What that turned into, the manifestation that took was basically, oh, the British are losing. Let's grab some stuff from them.
Yeah. It's like a lot of South American countries that declared war on Germany in 1945.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't remember the Argentine zone of occupation in Germany, but like, yeah.
You get the idea. Yeah. So it starts off just as an Austrian-French war. Do you think that because the French Constitution specifically talks about an executive branch being the king and his ministers, do you think they're going to put some other king that they can find in there? Or do you think they're going to kind of go back and do some hasty rewrites and kind of nix the monarchy from this constitution now that they don't have a king?
I think maybe they keep the definition of a king.
Yeah.
They keep the, I guess, Article 2. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what's our Article 2.
Yeah, they keep Article 2.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily put someone in it. They want to. I think they might wait a little bit there.
Yeah.
The reason I don't think two reasons I think they don't want to come out and like abolish the monarchy. One is, and I think the biggest is, one, we just spent 2 years writing this.
Yeah.
You can't do find and replace. They haven't invented Microsoft Word yet. So all of these balance, like the agreement was.
They'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Right. The other thing is this. I think largely everything that happens after Louis is captured and returned, the whole idea of we're going to be a republic, we are going to overthrow and kill our king, leads to Britain and Prussia, and as I remember, Russia as well, like
I think,
all of Europe declaring war on France. Let's not go ahead and poke that bear.
Yeah. Yeah, things haven't devolved to the point where nobody is looking further than their nose in the French government.
Or their chin. Too many Habsburgs.
Yeah.
Oh, that was right there.
Oh, I love it.
So I think that's what, they leave it open and are like, you know what, once we don't have foreign troops inside our country, we'll figure this out.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess obviously the Austrians are going to be led by the kings and, Louis XVI and all that. Who is going to be kind of the military leader on the French side? Because they're immediately, basically within a month or two, in a war with Austria.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because one of the, this also happens in Russia after their revolution. Generals tend to get to be generals because they like the person that put them there.
Yeah.
And so when you have a revolution, a lot, and this happened in our timeline in the French Revolution and, all of those times, a lot of your military leadership either went to Belgium as well. I mean, in this timeline, some of them actually did successfully make it over the border and did fight with the Austrians. Or you're you look at them as askew. You're not sure how much you can trust them.
Yeah.
The one person I think you can trust is Lafayette.
Mm-hmm. Who actually was essentially the head of the guards who were watching over Louis and Marie Antoinette.
He was the head
at the time.
Okay. He
was the head of their security detail.
We have made Lafayette so many things. In the last episode, we made him the French Santa Anna because he keeps popping up in French history around this time. And okay, I'm not going to say what we called him in the pre of this episode because we're going to get to that. He also might kind of be like the French Trotsky. He is the revolutionary that you trust with military affairs.
Yeah. He's not even really that much of a revolutionary.
But he's
incomparably, but he's got
the revolution.
Yes. He wasn't the Estates General.
He is a revolutionary at this point because we don't have revolutionary means something very different because we haven't had public safety. We haven't had guillotines. We haven't had any of that. So he is still very much in the mainstream of the revolution. And he organized a group called the National Guard that was outside of the traditional military because they didn't trust the traditional military.
Yeah.
So he's kind of a really good example of a revolutionary military leader. He's somebody you can trust, and he's in charge of a force that can actually stop the Austrians.
Yeah. And at this point, in this timeline, he still has essentially a sterling reputation. In the real timeline, the Champ de Mars massacre was directed. He was the one who led the Champ de Mars massacre and essentially killed a bunch of protesting civilians. And this really kind of tarnished his reputation.
Except that the Champ de Mars massacre was those civilians trying to take over the Tuileries Palace to basically kill Louis because they were pissed off about him. If he's not there, they're not there.
Nothing happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Lafayette is the golden boy of France still. So we say he kind of is to use a modern military term, I guess brigadier general in charge of the army or the supreme commander.
He's the supreme commander. Brigadier is like 1 star.
Yeah. Sorry.
He's a French George Washington. He almost transcends military rank to be a political figure who is going to go out and fight the Austrians.
Yeah.
In our timeline, that happens at the Battle of Valmy in September 1792. We might push that up a little bit just because the Austrians aren't putting together allies or anything. You don't have the whole debate.
You don't have to gather forces and all that.
The other side of it is you already know you're invading them. Once they capture, in our timeline, when they capture Louis and bring him back, they issue those threats, but they don't do anything until they actually execute him.
Yeah.
Which takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But I think, this is still kind of the period of hey, there's a campaigning season. You're getting towards the end of that. So next season, kind of spring, the Austrians invade. But I think the result still stands where Lafayette has kind of organized, basically, the term is a levée en masse.
Yeah.
Where they just take freaking everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a gun, show them how to use it, send them out. And the Austrians are still kind of fighting almost like a 30 years war where we have professional, like mercenary soldiers.
and standing armies. Yeah.
And the fact is, you hear about Napoleonic tactics. The thing about Napoleonic tactics is this is the point in technological development where you can take peasants and turn them into just as good as soldiers very, very quickly.
Yeah, you don't need the level of close combat, close arms training that using a spear or a sword or, sophisticated, ranged weaponry like a crossbow or archery. You can give them a musket.
If you're trained, you're going to be better.
Yeah,
but you can get good enough pretty quick.
Yeah, the floor is a lot easier to get to. You can just, hey, here's a stick with a tube on it. You point it at the enemy, pull the trigger, something explodes, and somebody dies. That's a lot easier to explain than, several hundred years of, military sword fighting manuals. So this is, I think militarily, the tactics end up looking a lot like the War of the First Coalition in terms of the levy en masse versus this traditional army. I do almost
because that's an advantage France has.
Exactly. Because at this time, France was, I think, the most populous country in Europe.
Not only is France the most populous country in Europe, they've also, at a certain level, tapped into the people as a government and, have involved them in politics and in the nation itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because these people now have a vested interest. Yeah, they have a vested interest in the outcome of
exactly.
Victory. Yeah. So, spring of 1792. Then we're saying hostilities break out. Do you think it's going to be in French territory, or do you think the Austrian lowlands are going to be kind of the main battle?
I think it's in French territory. I think basically Austria declared war.
Yeah,
France.
They can just sit there.
Want to do this? They're like, you know what? Good riddance. Go away.
Yeah.
Take your ball and go home.
Yeah.
Austria is like, no. This is not okay. Austria is the one that has to change the status quo. So Austria is the one that invades.
Yeah. So I think probably say that the broad strokes of the campaign play out kind of like the War of the First Coalition.
The first part of it. I mean, again,
the first part of it.
It's like I think this might be one of the, a lot, and you still see a lot of this. One of the reasons Napoleon did what so much is because he could lose a battle and keep going.
Yeah.
This is not the First Coalition. This is just Austria.
Yeah, this is just Austria.
After they lose one battle, they don't keep going.
No. So you think the war ends up being relatively quick, say 1 or 2 campaigning seasons. The Austrians essentially realize that they're not going to beat the French, and Louis XVI essentially becomes a king in exile.
I think so. I think the French might move up into the Low Country, probably take Belgium.
Yeah.
I think they might stay out of the Netherlands just because the Dutch Republic. Again,
Belgium's one of those weird territories where it is, because one side of my family is from Belgium, so I know a little bit about this.
Which side of Belgium?
The Flemish side.
Because that's a real important question, too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I was going, is because no offense to modern day Belgians, but the real for dummies version of Belgian culture is essentially one half is very French, the other half is very Dutch.
Which half has the waffles?
The delicious part. So basically, what is essentially the closer cultural part of Belgium, I think, is what the French would probably take. Maybe the rest of it, but
I think they take the rest just because this is. Keep in mind, this is the Austrian base.
Yeah.
Number 2, Dutch Republic's not involved with this.
Yeah.
Nobody else is involved with this.
Yeah. So basically, you've got all of Belgium now becoming French. The Austrians are kind of on the back foot, licking their heels. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first question is, what happens with Lafayette after that? Does he try and pull a something like a Napoleon to take over the state, or do you think he's just kind of like, all right, did my thing, I'm peacing out, I'm gonna go chill?
This was what I didn't want to say.
Yeah,
this was what I censored myself from saying previously. I honestly believe Lafayette is a French Cincinnatus. The reason I say that, he really could be a Napoleon.
Yeah.
And by the way, Napoleon tries to portray himself as doing this in the early parts of his empire. But if you look at Lafayette, and he's also not a French Santa Anna either, because Santa Anna was definitely would not have done this. But if you look at Napoleon, if you look at Lafayette, in all of these opportunities, and he is involved in French politics. He is involved in the French Revolution. He's involved in the American Revolution. He's involved in the French Revolution. He's involved in the French Restoration. He's involved in like Louis Philippe coming in 1830.
He's around for a long time.
By the way, still putting a very fine point on this. 1830, still not Les Mis. But
callbacks to the other episode.
So many callbacks. Seriously, people, you need to listen to both. But the point is, if you look at this, he has all of these opportunities. If he wanted to,
he could
make himself very politically important. And he doesn't in any of them. And it's like, some people have that in them and some don't. And I don't think he does, because, if you look at the history of 1830, he's literally organizing that revolution, and people are coming to him and looking to him as hey, you are the guy doing this. And he basically picks Louis Philippe as who's going to be our new king.
Yeah.
If you have that Napoleon bone in your body.
You mean that Bonaparte?
All right, where's that mute button? You don't
give that up.
You don't give it up. You don't pick anybody else. You're like, well, here's this mirror over here, and gee, that guy looks pretty.
Yeah, I can maybe see Lafayette kind of sitting as almost like a George Washington figure. Because if you have a French kind of republic, even with a figurehead king, I can almost see them, if once they beat the Austrians, maybe sitting down and redoing the Constitution to mirror kind of more the American style.
I also, by the way, fun other fact, Cincinnati, Ohio is named after the Order of the Cincinnati. The Order of the Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Who were a group of American officers from the Revolution who kind of, in honor of George Washington, said, all right, by the way, take a step back. Cincinnatus, Roman political
general
figure,
turned dictator.
He was elected as a dictator under the Roman sense, where there's a crisis. You are in power to solve this crisis. And he, by the way, he came in, I think as a dictator, you have 3 months.
Yeah, or 6 months, something like that.
He came in, solved it in 1 month.
Yeah.
And then went home.
Yeah. Went back to his farm.
And he is very much idolized in Roman history over that. George Washington kind of emulates that. And one, given the relationship between Lafayette and George Washington. Two, given the time frame in which this is happening, by the way, about 1796, when George Washington himself is deciding to step away from politics and be like, I'm done, I'm going back to farm. I could really see Lafayette doing that.
Yeah. So I can maybe envision him being
and by the way, setting himself up as and we talked about this a little bit, it's the presidential election in 1796. John Adams won because George Washington kind of anointed him. Yeah. So I could see Lafayette going back, maybe not going back to farm, going to
being some kind of an elder statesman of
going to some left bank cafe and holding court, being an elder statesman, being a
and he still would have been in the States General. because he was a member of the nobility, so he still would have been in the
Right.
political class. He just would have been
Right.
kind of more akin to like a, to use a modern analogy, think of like a Ted Kennedy, kind of late in career, kind of like the elder statesman of the Senate, sort
Okay.
of,
Okay.
kind of feel is what I'm thinking for Lafayette. So that leaves us with kind of a French Republic, but we also at the same time, and we don't have to go a ton into this because we kind of went into it on the other version of this fork. But right around when all this is happening, the Haitian Revolution is also kicking up. And I think, unlike in the other version of this, where we said the French with a Louis XVI still on the throne probably crack down on Haiti, if you have a more Republican France, they still very much want to keep Haiti in the fold because it's their gold mine, that sugar cane and all that stuff. But I can very much see them putting, especially with all these, egalitarian ideals, almost making, Toussaint Louverture like a governor of a sort of friendly client state Haiti.
I was taking this a different place.
Okay.
Which is in last time when we talked about it, we looked at it and said, hey, they don't have European continental military commitments.
Yeah.
They have the troops to send there.
Yeah.
Here they don't.
Okay.
Here they are threatened by Austria immediately.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they have the troops to send halfway around the world.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you think they would just have to let Haiti walk for the time being?
I think they let Haiti
because of the pressure?
I think it might be similar to like what actually winds up happening in our timeline, which is they don't necessarily like say we're no longer in charge of Haiti.
Yeah.
They don't accept it. But on the ground reality,
they can't do much about it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then do you think in a situation where, since we're talking about Haiti, that, kind of gets us to North America, in this situation, do you think the Louisiana Purchase still happens in this timeline under Jefferson with a sort of Lafayette or somebody else on the throne? Do you think they try to keep Louisiana just because they don't have to do much with it?
I think it's an interesting question because I think one of the stressors pushing France, by the way, who sold Louisiana?
Napoleon.
Okay, he's not in the picture.
Yeah.
One of the things pushing Napoleon to do it was the ongoing wars.
Mm-hmm. Because he needed the money.
I don't think you have ongoing wars.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they might be okay holding on to it. They're not pressed to get rid of it. They're not looking to do a fire sale or anything.
Yeah. I can almost see it, and this may be getting, something for randomly further down the timeline. I can almost see the next bout between Britain and France, whenever that happens, I can see Louisiana being dealt with as part of that, because we're not very removed from the French and Indian War and all these wars of the 1700s over these colonial territories.
I would see the upper Midwest being dealt with as part of this. I think, we touched on this a little bit, and man, after the last episode, we brought up some stuff and we're like, we've got another episode in this. There's enough here. But we talked a little bit about, and this is, a little bit early to be talking about a Tecumseh, who was so important in like our times, War of 1812.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for the British alliances with the Native American tribes of the upper Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it makes it past like kind of a Kentucky, Ohio River area.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes it down into like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas.
Louisiana is the part that the French are going to want to keep because New Orleans is kind of the jewel of their North American
Right. And I think
Empire
that's
without
too
hating.
big of a chunk.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, I think there might be a really interesting flashpoint between the British supporting the Native American tribes in the American Northwestern, at this point, by the way, Northwest means, Ohio and Michigan.
Yeah. Kind of the Great Lakes area.
Supporting Native American tribes in that area. And I think that might be an interesting flashpoint between basically like the British Empire, the American Republic, the French polity.
Yeah. And I think in this timeline, if you have a more solidified French, a true republic, not the Committee of Public Safety, Reign of Terror, all that crap, I think, especially once you get to...
Let me be very clear about this, by the way, because we didn't answer that question. We said that the French are going to keep their constitution of 1791 temporarily and at least leave the king a question mark.
Yeah.
They might still be a constitutional monarchy in the period you're talking about.
Yeah. But they're going to be a much more, compared to even a British parliamentary system, they're going to be a much more federal, kind of American style government, even if there's a king in the executive branch. So where I'm going with that is, once you get to a Jefferson presidency, remember, he was in France for a long time as ambassador. So I think if you have this kind of system, there's going to be a much more, I'm not going to say they're going to be outright allies or anything, but there's going to be a much more friendly attitude.
I very much think they might want.
It's not going to be like the quasi-war.
They easily could be, yeah.
It's not going to be like the quasi-war in the Adams administration with the French. It's going to be much more friendly.
Because the French don't have the stressor of the continental system.
And if the British are trying to play the Northwest Territory Native American tribes against the French and the Americans are going to see the French as kind of their continuing natural ally against the British, because the Americans are still going to want to go west. And
I think the other interesting thing here is, after the 7 Years' War, the British kind of picked up a lot of Native American allies in that area. But during the 7 Years' War, those tribes were primarily French allies. So you might have a lot of nasty intertribal war in the Great Lakes area where they're not acting as a single unit.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess to kind of jump forward, not jump forward really, but kind of look towards the future of Europe. One of the things that the French Revolution and especially Napoleon in our timeline kind of kickstarted was the sort of rise of sort of nationalist sentiments that really kind of kicked off with 1848, but was kind of starting before that.
By the way, I need to say it again. Per Mike, I am contractually obligated to say Revolutions of 1848. What am I about to... Not Les Mis.
Still not what Les Mis is about.
Still not Les Mis. So, I understand what... Here's the thing, though. France never overflowed its natural borders.
Yeah.
You did not have the French trying to recruit Polish legions.
Yeah.
You didn't have the French forming the German Confederation. You didn't have the French forming the Italian Republic. None of that happens.
Yeah.
Just to put this out there, keep in mind, the Dutch have been a republic
since like the 1500s, right?
I mean, close to, yeah. I think kind of like the Dutch Republic is, it's complicated because, hey, where'd William of Orange come from? But like, you have had, and Venice, and you've had Republican forms of government in Europe. The reason the French Revolution and the French Republic is such an epoch is because it overflowed its borders, and eventually all of Europe was part of a political entity that got determined in Paris.
Yeah. And I think you don't have some of those things that really push the nationalist sentiment, but I do wonder if once people in some other monarchies is the word I'm going to use, once they see that this kind of thing can work in France
on a large national scale.
On a large
I guess
national scale. Yeah. I think there's certainly going to be at least some noises that start to be made, especially in someplace like in the last episode I talked about Austria being just such a weird, huge
Mhm.
conglomeration of so many different cultural groups. And, to some extent, sort of the same thing with the Prussians and the sort of North Germans, because there's, the Prussians, but there's also all the other people that are part of that,
I mean,
the Bavarians,
just to be,
the Bohemians.
to be perfectly honest here, I think let's not forget the Act of Union is about to be passed.
Yes. Yeah.
So Great Britain is almost in its own special way, kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
A conglomeration of very distinct polities.
Yes. Yeah, because at this point it is still it's not the British Empire yet, because those acts of union have not taken place.
Right, but they still have distinctive, they control Ireland.
Oh yeah,
and Scotland,
and Wales.
Yep.
Yeah, all of that, but it's not the modern quote unquote United Kingdom that we think of.
Right.
So
it in and of itself, is a multi-ethnic, multinational state.
Yeah. And so I think that's going to be kind of an interesting, not super divergent, but kind of an interesting sort of less volatile, I guess is the word that I'll use, kind of parallel to what happened in our timeline with all these Napoleonic confederations, Metternich in 1848, and what happens after.
Germany is a really interesting example of what we're talking about.
Thinking.
Because you have two ideologies, two currents here.
Yeah.
And in Germany, you can very clearly see them split apart.
Yeah.
One of them is a nation, a shared language, a shared culture, all of these things. And I get very nervous when Germans start saying things like that. Very nervous.
Yeah.
However, the other, thing is this nation having a say in its own destiny through some form of representative government. And in the French Revolution, those two things come together. And there's kind of a sense of that. In Germany, they very clearly split apart.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is, I think, which of those two, one, are they going to stay united? Those two ideas, are they going to be united? And B, if they do split apart, which of them is going to win out?
Yeah.
Which of them is going to be the ideology that shapes the 19th century?
Yeah. And I think that sets up the next kind of conflict that's going to happen, because if you look at just the pieces on the board in continental Europe, you've got a constitutional monarchy / republic France, which is going to kind of be aligned with those more republican northern German, northwestern German areas, and some central German areas like the really tiny states of the old Holy Roman Empire, versus the big autocratic Prussians in Eastern Germany, who are the absolutists, kind of trying to gobble everything.
Who are literally what I said, the ones able to split this apart.
Yeah. And the Austrians down south, who are kind of the classic, now that the French are gone, this sort of ancient medieval autocratic regime. So I think that, the age-old conflict of France versus Germany is not gone, but it takes on a political systems kind of element to it.
So you're thinking that
I almost think that the Holy Roman Empire doesn't go the way of the dodo. I think it might, especially for these kind of Western and central smaller German states. I wonder almost if they take a look at what happens in France and say, hey, let's take this old idea and see if we can rework it into kind of a more cohesive federated system.
Maybe a constitutional system, where not so much France, because France, even in 1791, its constitution had some very strong centralizing.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's because it was one country.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things they might be able to look at is America.
Yeah.
Or this idea of a federal system. I mean,
yeah,
I guess,
like an original
everybody,
America, like a Articles of Confederation, separate states coming together, not the kind of modern United States as one unit.
I mean, if you listen to us enough, you hear states arguing. I claim a couple of them, but kind of like what what people say, people think that Franz Ferdinand was going for.
Yeah.
Which was almost United States of Central Europe.
Yeah.
So a German polity, a Italian polity, a Hungarian polity, something like that.
So I'm thinking, I don't think the Austrians are going to want to touch it.
Okay.
I think the Austrians are going to fight against it. One, because that threatens the control of their direct territory, but also for most of the last 400 years, the Austrians have been the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah. For all practical purpose.
Yeah.
So if they see these other Central German states making noises about redoing the Holy Roman Empire, well, whether there's going to be
leaving or forming a rival.
Exactly. The Austrians are going to fight against that because that's a threat to their sort of system, but also that's a prestige hit because, if you've had the title of Holy Roman Empire for 400 years, you're going to want to be able to keep using it. Whether or not it actually does anything for you. It's like, a South American military dictator with the fruit salad of medals on his chest. Those don't mean anything, but God, they look good. So you got to have them.
I mean, the question I would ask is this. I kind of get what you're saying, which is Austria stepping up and trying to stop the formation of, let's call it a North German Confederation, something like that.
Yeah, or like a Central German Confederation, something like that.
Oh, but the question I have is this, and I very much, thinking about your point of Austria wants to keep calling itself the Holy Roman Empire. If that means, if I realize, they're not going to be presented with this stark a choice. But if you're a Habsburg emperor and you are presented with the choice of going to war for Schleswig-Holstein and losing your title because of the stresses this war is going to put on your polity, or withdrawing and keeping Austria, probably Bavaria, and what are your kind of core areas?
Yeah.
You're probably okay giving up some of those.
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose everything if you try and hold everything.
Got you. Yeah, I got you.
And by the way, I think they might try. Because I think, like I said, it's not going to be presented to them as that stark a choice.
Yeah.
But the interesting question now, the next part of it is this. Who would they wind up fighting? I think the key, one of the, you hear the idea of the natural borders of France.
Yeah.
The Alps, the Rhine, and by the way, at this point, the Rhine kind of extending up into the Low Countries.
Yeah.
And then the Pyrenees. France is France, and they're very happy there.
Yeah.
For most listeners of this show, if I were to say the names Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, you probably think about battleships and cruisers of the Second World War. But who were they? They were the Prussian military reformers that basically, after Prussia got whooped by Napoleon at Jena and Austerlitz, and all of these battles that happened, once France overflowed, they kind of took some of these ideas of the Levée en Masse and updated Frederick the Great's classical army
Mhm.
and built the system that was able to beat Austria and take over all of Germany.
Yeah.
Do you see the flaw yet? Do you
Yeah.
see the difference here
Yeah.
yet?
Well, it's interesting because that essentially delays Western European military development by 20, 30 years until the next war kicks off, where they're going to have with the next war with France kicks off,
I
where they're
love
going to
how
have to learn it.
optimistic you are that it's going to take them 30 more years.
Well, so that's why I said the next war with France, because if other European countries are fighting a war that doesn't involve France, they're not going to run into this levee en masse. Austria might try to do it a little bit, but they're going to have trouble.
Actually, I'm not even sure about that. And here's why. I think the levee en masse is a political outcome of the unique situation that France was in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Once France stabilizes and builds itself an officer class that it can trust again, and all of these other things, I'm not going to say necessarily that that is something they keep doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Because that, like,
I can see that.
Like, that is kind of if you are in an existential war where when you lose, you don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you do a levee en masse. Like, literally, the Austrians said, we will flatten Paris.
Yeah.
That is a levee en masse time.
Yeah.
What is not a levee en masse is a couple of cities in the Rhineland.
Yeah.
And that might be what you have changing hands in these future conflicts.
Interesting. So
right?
I guess, So I guess that leaves us with an 18th century that has kind of this, the Austrians and the Germans kind of not.
I think the Austrians and the French might just keep using Germany as a playground.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. Instead of, the Prussians
almost
and the
taking the Germans out of this. They don't really have agency in this much at all.
Yeah. The Prussians are making noises in Eastern Germany, but they're also at the same time kind of in that weird area where they can go east and west depending on what the play looks like. So
and go south into Poland.
So I think that I almost envision the Prussians as not necessarily being synonymous with Germany the way we think of it now.
Okay.
More kind of in a sense of like East Germany and kind of Poland being the connotation of when you say the word Prussian in this time period, that's kind of what you think. Almost more akin to sort of a more westernized Russia, but not necessarily like Prussia equals Germany.
Okay. Like, first question is there a German polity?
I don't think there's just one. I think you're probably looking at three.
Okay.
You've got Austria, Prussia, and then whatever the sort of Central Western Confederation thing is.
See, okay. Because I'm envisioning, you have Prussia.
Yeah.
You have something in the north.
Yeah.
Then you have South Germany. Call it Bavaria. Bavaria is a huge thing. But, Württemberg and other places down there.
Yeah.
And then you have Austria. But Austria is almost no longer a German polity.
Yeah.
But the Southern Germans are kind of the Austrian.
They're the Austrian sort of proxy, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've got kind of, and I even like Bavaria and maybe sort of like Bohemia, which is still, it's not really Czech yet. It's kind of still the medieval Bohemia at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, even in like when they're after the Napoleonic Wars, when they're forming, I guess 1848, when they're forming like the German Confederation, they ask Bohemia, "Hey, are you guys German? Like, do you want to be in on this thing?"
Yeah. So I think that's
kind of the difference between like a Saxon and a Bohemian was almost less than the difference between like a Württemberger and a Hanoverian.
Yeah.
They were not,
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the German chessboard, and what that does is that, because it's not just one monolithic kind of Germany, at least at the beginning, that removes a lot of the.
It's a buffer state, and since it's so fragmented, guess what?
Yeah.
All of the war,
Yeah.
Okay, if I were to ask
it's
you,
kind of like the Low Countries 200 years before this.
What changed hands in like the War of Austrian Succession? Well, okay, it was Upper Silesia.
Yeah.
Where's Upper Silesia?
It's like, yeah.
Because it's a fragmented polity. I think the interesting thing here is your wars are not existential.
Yeah. They're much smaller piecemeal bits and bobs. It's almost reminiscent of the like the Renaissance era Italian city-state wars, where they're kind of all going at each other, taking a bit here, a bit there. 20 years down the road, all the enemies are friends and all the friends are enemies, and they just move back and forth.
And I think you can draw a pretty clear line from the existential war of the First Coalition, Levée en Masse, to 1914.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Yeah. So we may have found a way to, at least, if not avert, drastically alter World War One.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure something's still going to kick off, but it's not going to be the sort of massive.
I don't know. I think you're always going to have I still don't know which of the two streams of thought takes over, whether it's constitutionalism or whether it's nationalism or whether it's the combination of them.
Yeah, I suspect it's a much more, in this timeline, it would not be as stark. Yeah. I think it's going to be a much more kind of gradual kind of shift here, shift there. You go back, you go forward. The trend is at least enough there to suggest that you'd probably start seeing more constitutional monarchies, but it wouldn't be this kind of stark monarchy versus nationalism.
Well, the other side of it is you wouldn't have had somebody come in and clear cut the forest.
Yes.
Of thousands of years hundreds of years of European history.
Yeah.
And the Congress of Vienna did what it could and did it pretty well, but once stuff was broken, stuff was still broken.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's interesting. And I think this is kind of one of those things that, you can kind of fiddle with it till the cows come home. But I think this kind of sets up enough differences that I think it's kind of hard to predict any further out kind of what would really happen. It just kind of sets the stage for a very different kind of world going into sort of the Victorian era and, the early modern world. So I think I'm kind of good leaving it where it is. I don't know if you have any last minute thoughts, but
I do have one last thought.
Is it about when Les Mis actually happens?
It actually is. It is 100%. It doesn't happen because Les Mis takes place in 1832.
Yeah.
Which was a revolt against Louis Philippe, the Orleanist king who was put in charge in 1830.
Yeah.
Literally by Lafayette. If the French king has fled, you don't have a French king. Maybe it's a republic, maybe it's whatever, but you don't have the changing of the houses, and you don't have the revolt in 1832. So there's no Les Mis.
Well, I'm sure you're very disappointed by that.
Yeah. Now I need to find something else to go see tomorrow.
Hamilton.
We didn't talk about how if that would change that.
I don't.
The national system and how does that interact with the continental system?
Yeah, I think some of that is probably hard to predict just because so much of the evolution of the American concept of the American government is tied in with westward expansion. And so also, much of that has changed.
And this sense of being like the responsible republic.
Yeah.
The French did it wrong.
Yeah, so we have to do it right.
Right.
And so I think it's hard to even guess. I mean, from an immediate perspective, I don't think that much of the top level sort of American perception of their government is going to change, because so much of that happens as a direct consequence of the Civil War and the late 1800s. And without a Louisiana Purchase, without a super clear resolution of the Northwest Ordinances and territories, it's hard to understand, I think, even what would change.
Yeah.
So I think for the time being, we're basically looking at a very similar America in the 1810s and teens and 20s, just without the Louisiana Purchase.
Are we? Does the United States have the Northwest Territories?
Well, I think that's I think that's where we're going to see this world's version of kind of a War of 1812.
Okay.
Between the British and the Americans, because I think the Americans are going to want to go there, like you talked about, because of the questionable alliances between the various Native American tribes, between the British and the French and the Americans. I think it's going to kind of be the sort of metaphorical Balkan powder keg of.
It is, and for the average American, yes, there actually was fighting in like Michigan, Ohio in 1812. You don't know about it. Probably you just don't. If the British aren't busy in Spain, you do. Yeah. And that's the world you're talking about. So that's very different. That's very different.
Yeah. And so I think in that situation, I think you may end up seeing either in America that kind of stops at the Northwest Territories. I can see them kind of maybe brokering deals with France for parts of the Louisiana Purchase further south. But at the same, depending on which way that war goes, because the British still have to ship troops across the Atlantic, that either, I think, ends American northwestern expansion kind of at the Ohio and the Columbia. They don't quite get to the Great Lakes, or Canada is just roped into America as part of that war. I think I don't know which way the coin flips, but I think those are your two outcomes.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily even know if it's stark one way or the other from one conflict, but once the first fight happens, however, there may be a couple more, but I think the end is one of those two things.
Okay.
And I think that then makes
I enjoy
what happens with Mexico, because they don't lose all of the American Southwest necessarily.
Well, here's the other part of it. I almost want to promise I'm going to say something and nothing else about it. Is there a Mexico? Because all of Latin America gains independence after Napoleon comes in and basically takes out the head and tries and occupy Spain and all of that. All of Latin American independence, with the exception of Haiti and kind of Brazil, is a result of the French invasion of Spain, which does not happen.
That's actually a really good question. I imagine there's probably a Mexico of some sort, or maybe Texas, and sort of the original version of Texas, becomes like this world's version of Mexico. Like you get sort of the Tex, Americans go over to Texas, they make a Texan Republic. It has some
You mean Americans go over to what is the northern part of
Mexico?
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
I think New Granada. New Granada was the name of it.
Yeah. But maybe that sort of turns into, the Spanish keep kind of the southern part, some of the Caribbean, and that part, because Americans are going to want to go there no matter what. But maybe Texas stays independent and it has like big Texas borders and the rest of it is Spanish. I don't know.
So like maybe maybe Texas isn't even contiguous with the United States.
No, I know. Well, at the very least, not across Louisiana, because I think that's the one thing the French will never give up is New Orleans and that part. Maybe in like Arkansas, there's a border, but
I mean, Arkansas. Who's going to fight for Arkansas?
Bill Clinton, but and John Calipari now, but So I think that's interesting. I think there's a lot.
You didn't see that one, but
no. There's a lot we could do, but I think that kind of leaves us at a really interesting point in terms of it's one of those things where you forget just how much the French Revolution and subsequently Napoleon do for the entire really development of history afterwards.
This is a really interesting one because we've revisited forks before.
Yeah.
I've been like, I don't think that's what would have happened. We've never done a duel like this.
Yeah. It's really kind of interesting.
How vastly different what we've done is.
Yes.
Because like in the previous episode, we basically had like 1914 nation states existing like 1830.
100 years early.
Yeah.
And here we have them possibly never
not
existing, at least some of them.
And almost multinational empires still being a going concern for a much longer period.
Yes.
I think that's the key takeaway of it.
Yeah. So I guess to transition to an ending, that gives me a good reason to talk about if y'all think of any other forks that we've done that you say, no, the way that you guys did that, I kind of want you to revisit and see if something
or take it a different way.
Yeah, if we've ever done any forks that you want to see taken a different way, if some really scream out at you, let us know in the Discord. We can do this for some other ones, revisit some old episodes and pick something to end a different way to see what would happen. Let us know in the Discord. Let us know what you think. If you have any other forks, we've got a few cooking that we're going to do. But if you have suggestions, as always, let us know. Chris, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Just what is coming.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, if you come across a fork in time, what should you do?
Take it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. Learn more and provide feedback by visiting our website at www.aforkintimepodcast.com. Connect to us on Facebook at facebook.com/aforkintime or follow us on Twitter at AFIT Podcast. If you want to support the show financially, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/aforkintime. We hope you will join us next time.